There is a moment almost everyone experiences. You make a decision, it feels reasonable, thoughtful, even correct. You explain it to yourself, you explain it to others, and then time passes, a month, 6 months, a year, and suddenly you are standing inside the consequences of that decision, realizing something painful. You missed what was obvious, not because you were stupid, not because you failed to think, but because you only thought one step ahead. You saw the outcome you wanted, but ignored the forces that would shape everything around it. That is not a failure of intelligence, it is a failure of strategic thinking. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli understood this better than almost anyone. Exiled from power, watching rulers rise and fall, he did not write about politics as people wished it to be. He wrote about power as it actually works. People called him evil, cynical, dangerous. But beneath that reputation was something more useful. Machiavelli studied how people think, how they misjudge reality, and why some see the future forming while others only react after it arrives. Today we live in a world where information moves faster than reflection. Every day brings new threats, distractions, opportunities, conflicts, and emotional triggers. Most people do not live strategically, they live reactively. They respond to what has already happened instead of noticing what is beginning to form. Machiavelli would have called this a kind of blindness, not natural blindness, convenient blindness, because it is easier to believe what comforts us than to study what threatens us. This is not a lesson in manipulation, it is a lesson in perception. It is about learning to see further than the immediate moment, to understand people more clearly, to stop confusing plans with strategy, and to recognize why most people who believe they are thinking ahead are often only thinking 1.5 steps forward. Machiavelli once wrote that a wise person should follow the paths of great men and imitate those who achieved greatness. At first, that sounds simple, but underneath it is a deeper principle. Strategic thinking begins with observation. Before you plan your own moves, you must study the patterns of others. Most people do the opposite. They begin with desire. They ask, "What do I want?" A strategist asks a different question. What forces are already moving? That difference changes everything. A plan is a story you tell yourself about the future. A model of reality is a map of the forces that will shape that future whether you like them or not. Most people build plans, strategic thinkers build models, and that is why they are harder to surprise. Modern psychology gives this another name. Human beings rely on shortcuts, mental habits, fast judgments. We see what we want to see. We notice evidence that confirms our beliefs and ignore evidence that threatens them. This is called confirmation bias, and it becomes most dangerous when a person feels completely sure they are right. To think 10 steps ahead, you must first fight yourself, fight the need to be right, fight the comfort of easy explanations, fight the temptation to build a future that feels good instead of one that is accurate. Strategic thinking is the discipline of seeing the world as it is, not as your ego wants it to be. This is where real strategists separate themselves from people who merely make plans. The planner says, "This is what I want to happen." The strategist asks, "What is most likely to happen if every person involved acts according to their incentives, fears, interests, and weaknesses?" That question is uncomfortable, but it is powerful. Machiavelli had a harsh view of human nature. He believed people are often ungrateful, fearful, self-interested, and changeable. Many hear this and think it is pure cynicism, but it is better understood as observation. People are deeply affected by context. Change the incentives and behavior changes. Change the balance of power and loyalty changes. change someone's status, money, fear, or sense of security, and you may see a side of them you never expected. This does not mean people are evil, it means people are human, and a person who thinks strategically does not use this knowledge to become cold. He uses it to stop being naive. Because many disappointments in life come from expecting people to behave according to your hopes rather than according to their pressures. Friendship, loyalty, love, and respect can be real, but they are also tested by context. A person who thinks 10 steps ahead understands this. He does not build illusions where reality will later be brutal. He studies what people do when the cost of loyalty rises. Another trap is the way the mind treats the future. Psychologists call it future discounting. The further away a consequence is, the less real it feels in the present moment. That is why people avoid difficult conversations today, even when silence will create a bigger problem later. That is why they accept short-term benefits that damage their reputation over time. That is why they stay in situations that feel comfortable now but slowly weaken their future. Machiavelli saw the same pattern in rulers. Many leaders chose immediate popularity, quick money, or temporary peace, while creating disasters that would arrive later. A wise ruler, in his view, had to endure a smaller discomfort today to avoid a greater danger tomorrow. That is not only political advice, it is psychological discipline. Thinking 10 steps ahead means making the future real before it arrives. Before you speak, ask, what will the sentence become in 6 months? Before you accept an offer, ask, what will this cost me later? Before you avoid a conflict, ask, what problem am I allowing to grow? Most people ask only, what do I feel right now? And that is why they are repeatedly defeated by consequences they created themselves. But strategy is not only patience, it also requires decisive action. Machiavelli wrote about fortune as a force that favors those who act boldly, but he also compared fortune to a river. When the river floods, it destroys everything. The wise prepare before the flood comes. That is the paradox of strategic thinking. You wait patiently while observing. But when the moment comes, you move without hesitation. Most people fail in one of two ways. They act too early because uncertainty makes them anxious, or they wait too long because action frightens them. Strategic thinkers learn to tolerate uncertainty. They can hold several possible futures in their mind at once without rushing to close the question. They do not need immediate certainty. They need accurate timing. Thinking 10 steps ahead is not about predicting one perfect path. It is about keeping multiple paths open until reality reveals which one is becoming most likely. That requires emotional control, because emotion narrows perception. Fear makes you focus only on danger. Anger makes you focus only on revenge. Admiration makes you ignore flaws. Desire makes you exaggerate opportunity. Modern psychology calls this emotional hijacking. When emotion takes control, your mind begins solving the wrong problem. You think you are making a strategic decision, but really you are trying to reduce discomfort, you are trying to feel safe, to feel respected, to feel certain, to feel powerful. A strategist does not deny emotion, he studies it. Fear may show you a threat, anger may show you a boundary, admiration may show you a value, but emotion should provide information. It should not hold the steering wheel. Between emotion and action, there must be a pause. That pause is where strategy begins. Machiavelli also understood the difference between the lion and the fox. The lion represents force. The fox represents perception. The lion can overpower enemies, but the fox sees traps before stepping into them. In the modern world, the fox is often more useful because power is rarely obvious. People often say one thing, believe another, and do a third. Not always because they are lying, often because they do not fully understand themselves. In negotiations, someone's stated position is not always their real interest. A hard no may hide fear of losing status. Resistance to change may not be about logic, but about identity. In relationships, anger may hide fear, shame, or pain. If you only react to the surface, people will constantly surprise you. If you learn to read deeper motives, human behavior becomes less mysterious. This does not make you manipulative, it makes you harder to manipulate. Another part of strategic thinking is narrative. People do not react only to events, they react to the meaning they assign to events. Two people can make the same mistake. One is seen as incompetent, the other is seen as bold, human, or unlucky. The difference is not always the action. The difference is the story already built around the person. That is why reputation matters, not as vanity, but as psychological context. A person who thinks ahead builds a reputation before he needs it. He understands that future actions will be interpreted through the image already formed in people's minds. If people already see you as disciplined, one failure looks like a temporary setback. If they already see you as careless, the same failure confirms their suspicion. This is not about pretending. It is about understanding that perception shapes consequence. Machiavelli also believed you should study your enemies carefully. Most people stop listening when conflict begins. They defend, they justify, they attack. Their attention collapses. But conflict is exactly when valuable information appears. People reveal their fears when pressured. They reveal priorities when cornered. They reveal weaknesses when they think they are winning. The strategic mind observes even while under attack. That is difficult, but powerful. Because the person who can keep learning during conflict gains an advantage over the person who only reacts. Another mistake people make is announcing their intentions too early. They talk about plans before they have built anything. They seek approval before they have results. They tell the world what they are about to become. But unfinished action carries energy. Once you announce it, you often release part of that energy through words. You receive praise too early. You invite doubt too early. You give competitors time to respond. You allow other people's emotions to enter a process that still needs silence. Machiavelli understood that incomplete information can be an asset. Predictability makes a person vulnerable. Silence preserves room to maneuver. This does not mean you should become secretive about everything. That would be paranoia, not strategy. It means you should understand the value of timing. Do not reveal a move before the move has strength. Do not ask the crowd to approve a foundation that is not yet built. Work quietly. Let results speak when they are strong enough to survive reaction. But strategic thinking must not become cynicism. That is the danger. If every person becomes a piece on a board, and every conversation becomes a move, you lose your humanity. Machiavelli wrote about rulers, where decisions could determine the fate of entire cities. Most of us are not ruling states. We are managing our lives, relationships, careers, and choices. The point is not to turn the world into a chessboard. The point is to avoid becoming a pawn in someone else's game. The difference between a strategist and a cynic is clarity. A cynic uses harsh truths to stop caring. A strategist uses harsh truths to care more intelligently. He can love without being blind, trust without being naive, hope without surrendering judgment. Strategic thinking does not remove warmth. It removes illusion. So when a person looks back at a bad decision and says, "How did I not see this?" the answer is usually one of three things. First, they only saw the outcome they wanted and ignored other scenarios. Second, they saw the risks but could not tolerate uncertainty, so they closed the question too early. Third, they acted under emotional pressure and solved an emotional problem instead of a strategic one. Thinking 10 steps ahead requires three skills. The first is scenario expansion. You must train yourself to see multiple possible futures, including the unpleasant ones. The second is tolerance for uncertainty. You must learn to keep questions open longer than feels comfortable. The third is separation between emotion and decision. You must be able to feel strongly without letting feeling replace thinking. None of these skills are natural for most people. They are built through practice. And all of them require one rare thing: honesty with yourself. Because the hardest opponent in any strategy is not always outside you, it is your own mind. The mind wants comfort. Strategy requires accuracy. The mind wants certainty. Strategy requires patience. The mind wants approval. Strategy requires independence. Machiavelli's real lesson is not that you should become ruthless. It is that you should stop being easily surprised by reality. The world behaves according to patterns. People respond to incentives, fear, status, pressure, and opportunity. Circumstances change according to forces larger than your preferences, and the people who move through life with power are not always the smartest. They are the ones who pay closer attention. To think 10 steps ahead is not a gift, it is a choice. The choice to look where others avoid looking, to hear what others do not want to hear, to leave open what others rush to close, and to act not when anxiety demands action, but when understanding makes action necessary. This will not guarantee victory, nothing does, but it will sharply reduce the number of foolish defeats in your life, and sometimes that alone is enough to place you far ahead of everyone who is still reacting to what already happened.